Hello, everyone. Welcome to the latest edition of Inside Pima County with Supervisor Rex Scott. I am Supervisor Rex Scott, and we are with the Director of our Development Services Department, Chris Poirier. Chris, thank you very much for being here. We really appreciate your time and have truly benefited from working with you and your team over the years since I became the District 1 supervisor. So really glad to have you with us today.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the being there.
Fantastic, fantastic. And we always like to start by asking each one of our guests to tell us about their professional journey and how they came to be in the role that they're in now.
Sure. Shortly after college, looking to, get a job and closely related to my degree, it was in regional development, sort of an aspect of geography, some economic development. I went to it, stumbled upon a job listing, used to be in newspapers back then, found it, contacted them, submitted my resume, and then had written it off. After many months, I didn't hear back. Call from Pima County.
Ooh, what?
But story short, interviewed, competed, and started my career at Pima County in 1990 as a zoning inspector.
And then climbed the ladder through the Development Services Department. What are some of the other roles that you had besides being a zoning inspector?
Sure. So then I pivoted to a code enforcement inspector, which was a pretty interesting job, really dealing with all types of, learned a heck of a lot about people, code, and the process. Then I moved up into a more formal planning side of development services. I was a planner, and then I became a senior planner, and then I became a principal planner, and then I became some other type of manager involved in planning, so on and so forth. So started as a permit reviewer, then I did code enforcement, and then worked my way up through planning.
So you've been with the department for over a quarter century.
Yep.
And you're a Tucsonan. You grew up here, and your father taught at the U of A.
Correct. Yep. I moved here when I was 6, part of the big family. Went to Lulu Walker Elementary School, the latest, and then pivoted to St. Hughes for a half a year, and then went to Greenfields 7 through high school, and then went to the U of A, and then went back to the U of A to obtain my master's while working for them.
And as I've mentioned to you in a previous conversation, you need to sometime connect with Supervisor Christie, because just like you, he went to Greenfield.
He too was a Griffin.
Yes, he was. Yes, he was. You guys need to have that conversation. So I really appreciate what you said about how you learn so much about how people behave in different contexts. Tell us a little bit about the areas of responsibility for development services and how those areas of responsibility cause you to have to interact with a lot of different people in our community.
No, that's a good question, because we regulate something as small as you needing a full permit for replacing a water heater to something as huge as a 600-acre master plan development. We are the regulator of all those entitlements and permits between that entire scope. So with it, I end up working with all sorts of people at all sorts of stages. And most of the time when they see us, whether they are a developer, and this is a huge project for them and their team, it's super important. But at the same time, I could be working with someone across the counter. They're here just because they want that water heater permit. They don't know how to do it. It's a big deal for them. It's stressing them out. So it's, you learn how important it is for these people as we're working with them. So I really try to be empathetic to all types of people throughout sort of the level of development they're working with us on.
So as we were talking about before we went on the air, permitting for all kinds of different things and processes is a big focus of the work in the Development Services Department.
Absolutely. So any real significant work to probably requires some type of a permit. And normally the permit means you submit to us, what you want to do, how you're going to do it, generally what will the kind of blueprints, what will the plan look like, we're reviewing it. If we could get to an approval, we call it permit issued. The permit's been issued, you're going to pay a fee at that point, the permit fee that reflects the scope of your work. Smaller projects are a lot cheaper than a giant project. And then once the permit is issued, you have the green light to begin construction. Picture a house. If it's you have a permit and you issue it for your own permit, you're going to build it in stages. So you're given the green light to begin construction. Typically, people start with the soil, compaction, and the foundation.
Okay.
When that's done, you give us a call. We send out an inspector. We clear you, then you get to go to the next step. So maybe the next step is going to be framed. Then after that could be your electrical and the plumbing, so on and so forth. In the world of what we do at Development Services and building, it's all about steps and stages. You kind of make it through one, you get to go to the next, so on and so forth. And we're with you along the way doing that.
Well, I appreciate you saying we're with you along the way, and that anecdote that you shared about someone who doesn't know how to get a permit for their water heater, and that's front of mind for them right now. What are some resources that the department makes available to our constituents to help them navigate whatever permitting process they may be engaged in?
Well, number one, we have living, breathing humans that are truly available Monday through Friday, 8 to 4. We are answering the phone all day long. We are available for people to come down. So the priority is for us to address those questions, right? So we have the human side of people able to help you with your stuff. In addition to that, we try to make everything as clear as possible through the internet. We have created a new permitting portal that asks you a series of questions and then tries to narrow you down on what type of permit you may need. We have such a wide range of permits. You don't even know what it's called, right, until you know what it's called. So we try to help you with our portal to kind of guide you, and then once you know what it is, once you know what you want, sort of the terminology in our system,
sure,
then we help you guide you what you need to submit. And, but that's still a computer, and now and then you're going to get stumped, and then I'm going to go back to the humans, right? So we try to help people to help themselves the most they can, but if they're stumped, we will help you.
Well, I imagine just because of numbers, that most of the folks who you work with are just average constituents dealing with residential permitting. But what about the commercial permitting side? And when you're responding to that, talk about how quickly we try and turn around commercial permits.
Sure. So we sort of have a few kind of groups of customers. We have, I call them the one-offs, people that maybe you're going to only work with us once in their life, right? The occasional person doing a little work at their home. Mm-hmm. They deserve probably the most human help, right? I mean, when I'm talking about we're here to help, I'm really thinking about those people.
Right.
Right. They research what they can on the internet, and they're just stumped. We're going to really help you. The next group are probably sort of the big production people, right? So KB Homes, they're pulling, 10 home permits a month. They're really good at it. The way we help them is probably different. More
that they have trained staff.
Correct. Yeah, they know our system. We'll help them sort of in a bulk situation. If they identify sort of the glitch with our system, we could turn the system on or off to help them. But they tend not to need as much help. And then the third category, the commercial, there's a requirement that commercial construction is done by a professional registrant, so an architect or a civil engineer.
Okay.
So there is an expectation of their knowledge base because it's a lot more complex to get a commercial related permit that you need to have that seal. So we help those folks too, but there's sort of a, we help the little people the most, production builders probably second, and the commercial people probably need the least amount of hand holding. Some of the work they're doing is so complex, we're going to help them.
So talking about those different folks and how you work with them prompts me to ask this question. What are the various divisions or work groups within development services?
Sure. So our biggest group are the buildings. So these are the people that are reviewing the building plans. Then there's the building inspecting crew, right? The folks driving around all over the county doing the inspection after the plans have been approved. So building is probably our biggest number of folks. They take in the most permits by far. They're doing the most work. They're the biggest staff. Then we have the planning group. Planning group is looking for more long-range policy. They're managing the zoning side of the code. So not the building code, but the zoning code. They're a pretty good sized group. There's about 9 or 10 folks in planning. Building is probably about 25. Then we have about 7 people in we call the site group. They're the engineers of our teams, typically doing the reviews for what we talked about earlier, the commercial, right, to develop. And then we have sort of a final group we call them operations. Making sure the permit machine is running, issuing refunds, taking care of the financial side of it.
So as a supervisor, when our office gets constituent calls, it's mostly for people who are asking for assistance or support with permitting. But it has seemed to me over the 6 years that I've been in this office that when we interact with your department, it's mostly because of a big project, something that has gone through the design review committee and then the planning and zoning commission. And then we also sometimes have situations that are brought to our attention that go through the Board of Adjustment. So could you talk about those different entities and how your department interacts with them?
Yeah, so a lot of what I've been talking about up to this point with that regard building, again, that's nuts and bolts. Let's have something that's built. That's we're doing the inspections that you built and stuff like that. The other big, real public side of what we do that we tend to we call them the entitlements. So anytime you want to change your zoning, there's a public process called the rezoning process. That process, you literally are inviting people, neighbors, to participate in the process. So we're doing outreach. We're requiring the applicant to do outreach. Decisions are then made at public hearings. So those are really a point that draws people to your office and our office. We're literally inviting people to come and participate in this larger process.
And the document that helps to guide a lot of those decisions, not just for Pima County, but for all Arizona counties, is our comprehensive land use plan, which has to be revised per state law every 10 years. Mm-hmm. Talk about our comprehensive land use plan and the process that we just went through to revise it.
Sure. So you're correct. A lot of what we can and can't do, our authority comes directly from the state. The state tells us what we can and can't do. It tells us what we have to do. So every 10 years, we have to amend our comprehensive plan. So recently, we did that. It was a very public process. All sorts of stakeholders who were involved. It was a multi-year process to update our long-range plan, also known as a comprehensive plan. And then the name we gave it is Pima County. So, we work with all sorts of other department stakeholders throughout the county to come up with really a very cohesive set of policy that then helps drive outcomes that we're looking to see occur. Outcomes of conservation of open space, outcomes of a greater amount of homes in a certain part of town to hopefully reduce housing costs. So, there's all sorts of policies in there that try to.
And the process that we went through, the public process, public input process that we went through as we were making the revisions to the comprehensive land use plan, describe that for us.
So we had an existing plan, and then when we update it, we just do a ton of outreach. And we want to hear from all sorts of affected stakeholders from what we're trying to do, what they want to see, implement their ideas, bake a big cake with all sorts of ingredients getting into it. After all the outreach, we try to put everything together, and then we bring it publicly first to our Planning and Zoning Commission to get their input, their recommendation on the entirety of the plan, which you can imagine is quite challenging. There's so much in there, and the commission's a very diverse group. But we got through that very well received, and then brought it to the board. Great approval from the board as well.
And who are the members of the Planning and Zoning Commission? How do they come to be part of that group?
So each elected board of supervisors, year one, to appoint 2 volunteer commissioners to serve on the Planning and Zoning Commission. So they are appointed, and then they are tossed into the fire, and they are learning on the job, and they are bringing, again, the great thing about that setup is that we have 10, again, very diverse people with different backgrounds, collaborating to come up with some good input. So they make a recommendation as a group, and then we take that recommendation before the 5 board of supervisors typically, and the board considers that recommendation. Sometimes it's a staff recommendation that's a little different. Then the board has to consider both, and then the board makes the final decision.
And because, as you said, counties are subdivisions of the state, a lot of those processes may be outlined in statutes.
Mm-hmm.
Statute also calls for a board of adjustment in each one of the 5 supervisor districts. And again, that's a 5-member body. Each member is appointed by the supervisor in that district. What's the board of adjustment?
No, great. I love it. I started my planning world with the board of adjustment.
Oh, right.
So the Planning and Zoning Commission, they are, again, making recommendations, big rezonings, code changes, law changes to our zoning code, and then, of course, our larger planning effort in the process, right? They are judging those aspects of land use, making a recommendation. It's a big deal. The Board of Adjustment, they are looking at variances. These are just specific exceptions to development rules. So there's a height limit. Your given zone will say your house can only be 34 feet in height. Oh, I need to go to 38 feet. Where do they go? They go to the Board of Adjustment, not ask for an exception to the rule.
So you mentioned that earlier in your career, you were a zoning inspector. But there are other inspectors within your department.
Mhm.
Sometimes our office will get calls from residents who think their neighbors are doing something that they shouldn't be doing on an adjacent property, and they want your department to look into that. What are some of the more typical code violations that come up? And when you answer that, one of the things that I've learned over these 6 years is sometimes I call your office thinking that it's something, a code violation you're supposed to handle, but then it goes to a different department, the Department of Environmental Quality.
Mm-hmm. Well, so currently, up until July 1, code enforcement, the code enforcement team that does the zoning code enforcement and building code enforcement through a memorandum of understanding is housed under DEQ.
Okay.
But they are coming back.
Oh.
They're coming back to development services in July.
That is breaking news.
It's breaking news. It was sort of, I wouldn't call it an experiment. There was a reason why we tried that model. We did that about 8 years ago.
Okay.
But now we're going to bring the code enforcement out. So there'll be more direct interface with us and that team. But they were doing the code enforcement on our behalf. Okay, right. So you were correct to call us. I think we would send you maybe to DEQ for a level of detail for a follow. But yeah, the most common complaint, I would say, it's sort of a neighbor maybe has too much junk piled up in the property, right? You call up.
So, what other state laws or voter approved measures limit what we can do locally with regard to a property owner's right to use their property?
Well, there's state laws for sure, and there's also federal laws, federal cases that we still have to work within. I would say overall, the state of Arizona is very much property rights state. In other words, a property owner has probably a lot more rights to what they can and can't do on the property than a similar property. The rules are set up with a lot of rights. A huge takeaway at Pima County and the state of Arizona, the unincorporated parts of Arizona, from the idea of a non-conforming right or a grandfathered right is another word for it. So if you started some type of a use or some type of a building before a rule came into play to say you no longer can have it, you get to keep it. Your grandfather, that's a huge asset. So even with new efforts and new initiatives and new policies, if someone is sort of already doing something and did so when it was legal, they probably have to keep doing it. Okay. So that's a huge aspect. And again, this federal case law.
And there was a voter passed proposition several years ago that also puts limits on what we're able to do.
Correct. And there's also voter passed initiative that have us open things up to do, like the legal recreational use of marijuana. Right. And that was approved. We had to change our zoning code to really deal with that new wave of what was then, the people had spoken and they wanted the ability to recreational marijuana. We had to then change our zoning rules significantly to meet that need. We're told what not to do, sometimes we're told what to do. Recently, accessory dwelling units or ADUs, we were kind of there, but we weren't all the way there until the state made us do it. The state mandated us to allow ADUs. We definitely are a subdivision of state. They give us our kind of parameters of what we can and can't do. And sometimes it is a direct, you better go fast than the change mandate.
So, Chris, we've talked about a lot of different work that goes on within your department, but when you're thinking about what you want our constituents to know about the work of the Development Services Department, is there anything that we've not touched on that you want to share?
I think just holistically, we like to hear from people. We do. So again, if you're stuck with our system, it's your bureaucracy, right? We try to be user friendly, but some of the stuff we do is very complex. We try so hard to make it understandable that it's a very complex system that we have to regulate. I want people to know that we are available. We're the really are humans. We're in the office 8 to 4 Monday through Friday. My priority, even as a director, for taking care of people that come in out for calls. So that's real. We're not getting away from that. And then when it relates to our entitlements or rezoning, our variances, when we send a letter to a neighbor telling you or the neighbor, hey, someone near you is doing something, if you're curious about it, reach out to us or show up at a hearing. We want people to show up. More participation leads to a better outcome. Some people think a lot of the decisions are already pre-baked. Like, oh, the developer, they always get what they want. That's not true. We want to hear from people. And a lot of the decisions we make, they're not binary. Strictly a yes or a no. There's a lot of negotiation between yes and no. It could be a yes, but let's protect this one person's view. It could be a yes, but you're going to have to close up that rowdy bar at midnight instead of 2 a.m. There's a ton of negotiation that can happen, but it only happens if people participate.
And that goes back to something that you said earlier in our conversation, is that working in this department, especially for the length of time that you have, has truly made you a student of human behavior. Well, Chris Poirier, we'll look forward to your novel then.
Oh, thank you.
And we very much appreciate your leadership of the Development Services Department and everything you do on behalf of our constituents. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure to work with you, to work with the rest of the board. I was very lucky to have a career in the county that I can name 100 people I'm grateful for. I leave with a lot of positive memories, thousands of stories, and I feel like our zoning code and our plan is in a good spot. I'm proud of what we've accomplished.
Well, and I'm glad that you said that so that our listeners and viewers know that you're retiring. And that's imminent, isn't it?
Yeah, next Friday.
Next Friday. So we were lucky to get you in and do this interview before you head off after a truly accomplished and distinguished career on working on behalf of the people of Pima County.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. And thank you all for listening and watching.